Most people believe conversations are simple exchanges of ideas, a polite back and forth where one person speaks and another replies, where reason meets reason and fairness guides the outcome. But powerful individuals rarely enter a conversation for that purpose. They enter to control direction, perception, and outcome. While others focus on what to say next, powerful people quietly guide the structure of the discussion itself. They decide what the conversation is about, what matters, and what will be ignored. Niccolò Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." In other words, people believe what appears convincing, not necessarily what is true. The most influential people understand this deeply. They do not simply speak well, they shape the psychological battlefield of the conversation. And once you recognize the tactics they use, something unsettling becomes clear. Many conversations were never equal to begin with. The first truth is this: powerful people control the frame before the conversation even begins. A frame is the invisible definition of what the conversation is really about, and whoever defines that frame controls the meaning of everything that follows. Change the frame, and the entire debate changes. Consider a leadership meeting where layoffs are being discussed. One executive says, "Layoffs will hurt loyal employees who have given years of service." Another executive responds calmly, "This discussion is not about layoffs. It is about protecting the company so that thousands of employees still have jobs 5 years from now." In that moment, the debate shifts completely. It is no longer compassion versus cruelty. It becomes survival versus irresponsibility. Whoever controls the frame determines who appears wise and who appears reckless. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he explained that a leader must learn to appear virtuous whenever virtue serves power. The frame decides what virtue means in that moment, and powerful people establish that definition before anyone else has the chance. The second truth is that strategic silence creates psychological pressure. Most people fear silence in conversation. A quiet pause feels uncomfortable, almost threatening, and the human mind rushes to fill the empty space. Powerful people understand this weakness, and they use silence deliberately. Picture a negotiation. A business owner presents the price for selling his company. Across the table, an investor studies the document quietly. No response. 5 seconds pass, then 10. The room becomes tense. The seller begins explaining his reasoning, even though no one asked for it. Soon, he adds extra details. Then he lowers the price slightly in an effort to appear reasonable. The investor still has not spoken. Nothing forced the seller to weaken his position. Silence did the work. Human beings interpret silence as judgment. The mind assumes something is wrong and begins correcting itself. Experienced leaders know that patience can produce concessions that argument never could. Often the calmest person in the room quietly holds the greatest power. The third truth is that powerful people ask questions that corner others without open confrontation. Direct arguments create resistance, but questions guide thinking. A skilled conversational strategist rarely begins by arguing. Instead, they guide people toward conclusions through carefully structured questions. Consider a political debate where a candidate is criticized for supporting a controversial security policy. Rather than defending the policy directly, he asks the audience a question. Do we believe protecting families should come before convenience? The audience agrees. Then he asks another question. If a leader refuses to make difficult decisions during dangerous times, is that leadership? Again, the audience agrees. Only then does he connect those ideas to the policy being criticized. By the time the policy enters the conversation, the audience has already accepted the moral foundation supporting it. They feel as though they reached the conclusion themselves. Machiavelli warned that forcing people breeds resentment, but guiding them creates loyalty. Questions are among the quietest and most powerful ways to guide the human mind. Drop this in the comments. Awareness creates power, because the moment you recognize these tactics, they begin to lose their influence over you. The fourth truth is that controlled kindness disarms opposition. Many people see kindness purely as a moral quality. Strategic thinkers understand something deeper. Kindness can also be a psychological instrument. A skilled trial attorney often demonstrates this technique. Instead of attacking a witness aggressively, the attorney speaks gently, with calm respect. The tone is soft and reassuring. The witness relaxes, their defenses lower. Then the attorney begins asking precise questions about small details, timelines, locations, statements made earlier. Gradually, inconsistencies appear. Facts begin to contradict earlier testimony. By the time the witness realizes what has happened, their credibility has already been weakened. Because the tone remained respectful the entire time, the witness never fully raised their guard. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear compassionate, faithful, and humane, even when their decisions required cold calculation. Perceived virtue lowers suspicion, and lowered suspicion creates vulnerability. Kindness, when used strategically, becomes a form of psychological camouflage. The fifth truth is that powerful people redirect instead of defending themselves. Average communicators immediately defend when challenged, but powerful communicators often shift the conversation entirely. Consider a corporate leader being interviewed about a scandal within his company. The interviewer asks a direct question about misconduct inside the organization. Instead of arguing or denying the accusation in detail, the executive briefly acknowledges the concern. Then, he expands the topic. He says, yes, that concern matters, but the larger question Americans should be asking is how we rebuild trust across this entire industry. In a single moment, the discussion moves away from his company's specific failure and toward a larger national issue. The focus shifts from blame to leadership. Suddenly, he is no longer just defending himself. He appears to be addressing a broader problem affecting everyone. Redirection works because it does not openly resist the question. It simply expands the scope of the conversation until the original accusation loses its central position. Many listeners follow the new direction without noticing the shift. The sixth truth is that powerful people repeat key phrases until they become accepted truth. Human memory has a predictable weakness. The brain tends to trust what feels familiar. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity begins to feel like truth. Skilled communicators exploit this tendency carefully. A phrase is selected, short, clear, emotionally resonant. Then, it is repeated consistently in speeches, interviews, statements, and conversations. Over time, the phrase becomes the lens through which the issue is understood. Political strategists have used this tactic for generations. Expressions such as national security, economic stability, or protecting families are repeated until they dominate the language of the conversation itself. Once a phrase becomes dominant, opposing arguments begin to sound unreasonable, even dangerous. Language quietly reshapes how reality is perceived. Machiavelli believed symbols and appearances were powerful tools of leadership, and words are among the strongest symbols a leader can control. The seventh and final truth is that powerful people control the emotional temperature of the conversation. The most powerful voice in the room is rarely the loudest or the most aggressive. Often, it is the calmest. A veteran negotiator once summarized this principle with blunt clarity. The moment you lose emotional control, you surrender strategic control. When someone becomes angry, defensive, or visibly frustrated, observers begin to question their judgment. Meanwhile, the person who remains calm appears rational, steady, and authoritative. Authority gradually shifts toward the composed voice, even before the arguments are evaluated. This dynamic appears repeatedly in political debates, corporate negotiations, and courtroom arguments. One individual raises their voice, the other responds slowly and calmly. The audience instinctively trusts the calm speaker. Emotional discipline, therefore, does more than improve communication. It shapes how authority is perceived. The person who controls the emotional temperature often controls the atmosphere of the conversation itself. Most people enter conversations hoping to be understood. Powerful people enter conversations understanding human psychology. They know that perception often outweighs facts. that silence can pressure others into concessions, that kindness can conceal strategy, that language can shape reality, and that emotional discipline can shift authority without a single raised voice. Machiavelli wrote about these dynamics, not out of cruelty, but out of realism. Human beings are influenced by appearances, emotion, and structure far more than they admit. Recognizing these forces does not make someone manipulative. It makes them aware. And awareness changes everything, because once you understand the hidden mechanics of conversation, you stop reacting automatically. You begin observing more carefully. You choose your words with intention, and slowly, the balance of power begins to shift. Not through aggression, not through domination, but through understanding the invisible rules that have quietly governed conversations all along.